This video was made possible by nearly 500 Patreon supporters and by our proud sponsor, Surfshark VPN. Perhaps one of the most unnerving parts of the year hasn't been the threat of a world war, an entire continent on fire, or even the globe under a worldwide lockdown. Among all the debate on how this situation could have been prevented, or the talk of when nations should start lifting their restrictions, it's easy to forget that we are already halfway through the year. This month's installment won't be covering nearly as much COVID-19 as you'd expect, as when looking at the news for May, the world has so many more interesting stories to offer. Let's break down these controversial patch notes. For the sake of structure, the more interesting stories were placed later in the video, meaning you degenerates will just have to eat your COVID-19 vegetables before that delicious dessert. On screen are the current corona figures as of the last day of editing, which has left the United States, Brazil, and Russia in podium positions. Although it's expected to take 1 to 2 years for a vaccine to be sufficiently tested, drug trials have however found promising leads that have been able to alleviate some of the symptoms. No members of the Swag News team are qualified to be giving medical advice, but for the love of fuck, don't do anything without the advice of a medical professional. This includes the simple 2-step cure that was left on my housemate's windshield, which was essentially just drinking a shit ton of alcohol. A seemingly underreported element of COVID-19 has been the strange effect it's been having on both children and young adults. According to doctors in both the United States and Europe, younger people are experiencing seizures as a result of coronavirus, disproportionately more than any other age demographic. Additionally, children who contracted corona are coming down with a condition called multisystem inflammatory syndrome, which can be explained as an overreaction of the immune system in fighting the virus. Experts can't pinpoint the cause at this time. However, one of the leading theories is that more inexperienced immune systems don't know how to properly combat the virus. One of the most fascinating phenomenon that's come out of the COVID-19 pandemic has been how nearly every single person on the face of the earth has their own theories on how the virus came into existence. One of the most prominent and outlandish of which attempts to connect the situation to the erection of 5G infrastructure, which led me down a long rabbit hole that never seemed to end. Let's jump in. The theory linking 5G and COVID-19 was originally suggested by a Belgian doctor in a local newspaper back in late January, when a general practitioner by the name of Chris van Kerkhoven pointed out that 5G cell towers had been built around Wuhan, and therefore, they could have been related to causing the virus. Kerkhoven later said, "I have not done a fact check, but it may be a link with current events." This is how the theory started. I wish I was fucking kidding. It would be like saying that because the number of people who drown in swimming pools strongly correlate with the number of Nicolas Cage movies per year, that the two are somehow connected. Nevertheless, this baseless claim, which has since been deleted from their online website, has circled around internet platforms ever since. An Australian-based poll, published on the 18th of May, found that 1/5 of 18 to 34-year-olds believed that 5G was being used to spread COVID-19. The same amount of people in the group also believed that Bill Gates was involved in the spread of the virus, and that the entire outbreak was to force people to get vaccinated. On an unrelated note, a report by the United Nations in 2017 ranked the Australian education system as one of the worst in the developed world. But let's get back on track. One UK-based broadband company alone reported 68 incidents in less than a month of people abusing their employees, vandalizing their buildings, and even setting fire to their towers. One apprentice network engineer was even suspected of contracting coronavirus when a man spat in his face after accusing him of importing the infection. In 1 week, there was a recorded 54,000 Facebook posts linking 5G and COVID-19, many of which are using sources that are clearly unreliable. One of the most widely cited was the news television network RT, which has produced over 10 stories on why 5G is harmful since the start of 2019. Upon further investigation, it turned out that the news site was entirely owned and funded by the Russian government, and an article by the New York Times back in May of last year detailed how Russian officials have been employing a misinformation campaign in order to catch up on their own 5G infrastructure. Most other posts were not nearly as convincing, with one claiming that the citizens of Wuhan had begun tearing down 5G towers around the city, but long-time viewers may recognize that this was a surveillance tower taken down during a protest in Hong Kong in August of last year. In terms of whether 5G technology is safe, experts in the field have found no cause for alarm. There have been thousands of studies into the health effects of previous generations of the technology, and even some of the most damning reports have been inconclusive at best. As always, viewers can find links to the sources used down below. In terms of how leaders around the globe have been handling the pandemic, none have been quite as irresponsible as President Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, the leader of the Latin American nation, who initially called the outbreak nothing more than a little flu and has refused to enforce stricter lockdowns, despite becoming the second most infected country on earth. Not only has this led to Brazilian gangs enforcing lockdowns themselves, and not only has he had 3 different health ministers in the space of a month, but he recently described himself to be the embodiment of the Constitution. Introducing South American Emperor Palpatine.
I am the Senate.
Even among his opposition, formally calling for his impeachment, Mr. Bolsonaro has doubled down on his stance, even going as far as to join anti-lockdown protesters within the nation. However, Brazil is far from the only country with people staunchly opposing lockdown restrictions. Protesters within the United States have proudly exercised their First Amendment rights in an attempt to lift the lockdown constraints that they feel has been encroaching on their freedom. One of the leaders of the reopen protests in South Carolina tested positive for corona, as well as 80 protesters from a similar event in Wisconsin. Supporters of the reopen movement suggest that the economic damage will be far more deadly should the nation continue the lockdown, while those who support lockdown measures often blame the lack of social safety nets, which have allowed other countries to more easily support citizens who cannot continue to work. It would be easy to assume that the COVID-19 outbreak would leave the biggest mark in the history books of 2020, but it wouldn't be hard to also give that title to the still ongoing protests in Hong Kong. The demonstrations, which have been raging in one form or another since March of last year, has been in rejection of the Chinese government's continued influence over the region, which has seen it attempt to replace the democratically run government by integrating it entirely into the Chinese mainland. There's a large amount of history to be unpacked to fully understand the situation, but put simply, Hong Kong was essentially leased to the United Kingdom for 99 years, during which time it became a democratically led economic powerhouse in the region. In 1997, the United Kingdom gave back the region to China on the condition that it should remain to have a high degree of autonomy and freedom going into the future. Unsurprisingly, the same government who has put over 1 million ethnic minorities into concentration camps doesn't really give a shit about upholding treaties that limit their power, and even less surprising has been that people who have experienced living under a democratic government really don't want to live under an authoritarian state. The past year has seen some of the most dedicated and coordinated protesting seen anywhere in history, which has led to over 2,500 injuries and over 8,000 arrests. However, even after such daring demonstrations by citizens of the region, this may not have been enough. A new security law, which will have already passed by the time this video is released, would all but eliminate the power of the Hong Kong Legislative Council, give the Chinese government the ability to set up a government agency directly within Hong Kong, and will give the Chinese mainland a more direct means to stop democratic protests. To those living in Hong Kong, this will spell the endgame for democratic freedom. as local government agencies won't be able to regulate what agents of the Chinese government do within the region. The Swag News team was fortunate enough to talk to a long-time protester from within Hong Kong who was able to share his concerns. The protester, who we'll call Matthew, explained that due to the security law being specifically passed to prevent the spread of terrorism, this will very likely come under the umbrella term of anything the Chinese government perceives as a threat to its authority. This means that freedom of speech will be a joke, entertainment will be moderated, and the freedom to assemble and protest could be perceived as an act of terrorism. Matthew predicts that the security law could lead to economic disaster, mass immigration, and a tightly controlled education system. The week of the announcement saw Hong Kong's main stock index drop by 5.6%, and when questioned about investor confidence in the region, the Chinese foreign minister said that the laws will improve Hong Kong's legal system, bring more stability, a stronger rule of law, and a better business environment.
I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Your new empire?
The nations of Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom have condemned the new security law for clearly undermining Hong Kong's promised autonomy. However, the United States backed out after their research indicated a lack of oil reserves within the region. The Chinese government has gained a reputation for oppressing those under its control and for its frequent disregard for human rights, and even Matthew, who has only wished to keep the same freedom he's possessed his entire life, fears that the new security law may spell the grounds for his arrest. Despite the threat of a prison sentence, Matthew told the Swag News team that he and his fellow protesters don't intend to stop their democratic demonstrations. Matthew went on record saying, "If we burn, the Chinese Communist Party will burn with us." One unfortunate event that the Swag News team was unsure about even covering this month was a dam breaking in Michigan. Considering the current state of the world and the fact that the event has fortunately resulted in no fatalities, it would have been an easy story to overlook. However, this was changed after it was reported that the breakage occurred only miles upstream from a fucking toxic waste storage facility. The disaster, which was described by the Michigan governor as a once-in-500-year catastrophe, is believed to have been caused by poor maintenance and is predicted to force over 40,000 people to evacuate. As of time of writing, the president has not provided aid due to disagreements with the governor. A report by a non-government organization has warned that the nation of Hungary is no longer a democracy. The country's Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, passed a bill at the end of March this year, which gave his government extraordinary powers during the coronavirus crisis, and set no limit on how long these emergency powers would be in effect. Not only has the Hungarian Prime Minister essentially reenacted the plot of Revenge of the Sith, but under his leadership, the nation has placed restrictions on opposing lawmakers and journalists, and in recent times, has attempted to consolidate control over education and the arts. As the downgrade comes from an independent entity, detached from any government organization, it calls into question whether the European Union will want to remove Hungary from its membership, as all nations are required to be classified as a democracy. The nation of Turkey has famously attempted to join the Union for several years, but has been largely rejected for its human rights violations. There is currently no criteria to remove a member nation from the European Union. However, member countries are able to vote to have many of the benefits stripped away. The United Kingdom has so far been the only nation to leave the European Union as we currently know it today. Meanwhile, North Korean authorities admit that the nation's founder didn't have the ability to teleport. A woman in China sends a metric ton of onions to make her ex-boyfriend cry, and UK police are searching for a person dressed as a 17th century plague doctor. In technology, the US Senate voted on a bill that would reauthorize a variety of domestic surveillance programs and make changes to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It didn't make any fucking sense to me either. The main point, however, is that it would require US authorities to obtain a warrant before being allowed to search a person's browser history. The bill, which has seen lasting support from those who push for increased online privacy, needed a total of 60 votes to pass into effect, but only received a total of 59, after 4 senators declined to vote, including former Democratic presidential nominee Bernie Sanders. The amendment, which was uncharacteristically supported and opposed by members of both the Democrat and Republican parties, was first put into place just 45 days after the 11th of September, 2001, and has remained a point of contention on the struggle between privacy and security. For the time being, American citizens will still be unable to search for questionable images of Club Penguin without Uncle Sam looking over their shoulder, which coincidentally leads us perfectly into this month's proud sponsor. If you want to confuse your assigned FBI agent, or just watch region-locked content that the Illuminati don't want your country to see, then you'll probably want a VPN. Surfshark VPN will let you remain completely anonymous online by allowing you to appear in any country of your choosing. Not only is this excellent in terms of protecting your privacy, but users can also find a wealth of new Netflix content exclusive to other nations. Gone are the days of having to be a degenerate pirate to watch the shows you deserve. Welcome to being a privateer and enjoying the perks of not having to watch the Smosh movie filmed on a fucking iPhone 4. Signing up with the code on screen will give viewers an 85% discount, an extra 3 months free, and users who miss the company of their assigned FBI agent can back out in the first 30 days and get a full refund. Surfshark VPN, it's cheaper than the other ones. Moving on, Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey announced this month that the company will now allow its employees to work from home indefinitely, even after restrictions are lifted. The corona lockdown has sparked worldwide speculation of how this temporary change may alter the way companies perceive the workplace as a whole and the viability of employees effectively working remotely. The entire concept of working from home has always been divisive, with many factors to be considered. Many people perceive working from home as a way to cut down on lengthy commute times or allow people to live in more affordable housing away from their workplace. In the tech hub city of San Francisco, for example, the average salary is a sizable $96,000 per year, but the average cost of rent is nearly half of this number. If an employee of a company in San Francisco was able to move to a more affordable city like Phoenix, Arizona, and still work remotely, just in rent alone, they could be saving nearly $30,000 per year. A study by a Stanford researcher in 2015 measured the performance of 16,000 employees of a Chinese call center and found that people working from home were found to be an average of 13% more productive, and each employee saved their company $1,900 a year in overhead costs. This isn't to say that working from home doesn't have its serious critics. The most obvious critique is how most jobs don't give employees the luxury of working remotely, with even companies in the technology sector finding it hard to operate without employees working in person. Apple, for example, has had to slow its hardware development because its engineers simply don't have the resources necessary to design $1,000 computer wheels from home. There is also an argument being made that the productivity loss of simply talking to colleagues is often compensated by the formulation of new and innovative ideas that often aren't fostered in a more isolated environment. The most likely outcome of the lockdown's effect on the workplace is that companies will use this time as a trial period, and working from home will become more accepted within businesses that were able to operate effectively. In entertainment, it's been reported that Netflix users watched an average of 2 hours a day in 2019 and has seen an increase of at least 30 minutes since the COVID-19 lockdown. Using these numbers, an analysis determined that the platform was able to save users an average of 219 hours of ads per year, or over 9 straight days of advertising. YouTube, on the other hand, is estimated to have saved viewers roughly 6,000 hours of ads after demonetizing half their platform. These hours were however filled by Raid Shadow Legends.
Psych!
The 4 unreleased sequels of James Cameron's Avatar have an estimated combined cost of $1 billion. The second film in the franchise is set for a December 2021 release, leaving the remaining movies to be released biannually. The original Avatar held the title of the highest grossing movie of all time, up until being toppled by Avengers Endgame last year. Seth Rogen has unveiled an upcoming project, which sees him play the role of an immigrant working at a pickle factory, who is accidentally preserved for 100 years. The Swag News team has actually invented time travel, and was able to find a review of the completed movie. The New York Times rated the film 5 stars, with the line, "He turned himself into a pickle, funniest shit I've ever seen." Meanwhile, we get a poster for next year's Space Jam sequel. Black Widow gets a release date for the end of the year, and Nicolas Cage has been cast to play Joe Exotic in a Tiger King scripted series. In gaming, Epic Games, best known for the Epic Games Store and Fortnite Battle Royale, released a tech demo this month of its new game engine, Unreal Engine 5. The demo, which was running on a PlayStation 5, featured an impressive new dynamic lighting system and a single statue, said to be rendered with 33 million triangles. Epic Games CTO, Kim Library, told World Today News that current high-end graphics cards would allow the demo to be run on a PC. However, it's likely that next-gen consoles will remain a far more cost-effective alternative for the average consumer. Along with the release, Epic Games has promised to provide the engine to any developers free of cost, and those creating games will not be required to pay any royalties for their first $1 million in revenue. Epic Games have become a controversial topic for game enthusiasts on PC over recent years, after its game distribution service was criticized for having lackluster features and an aggressive exclusivity model for building its online library. However, supporters of the platform cite its much lower royalty cost for publishers and its commitment to mitigate risk for smaller independent developers. The new engine, entirely funded by kids named Jason buying Fortnite dances, will be available in 2021. Games released this month included the Mafia Trilogy, Minecraft Dungeons, Poly Bridge 2, and the BioShock Collection for Switch. Upcoming releases for June include The Last of Us 2, Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated, and Valorant. This month in particular, we've left the best story for last. One of the most interesting countries to the Swag News team has been Venezuela, which since the start of 2019 has gone through a leader refusing to give up his power, a failed coup, a complete economic collapse where RuneScape gold farmers are making several times more than the average wage, and finally, earlier in the year, when the Venezuelan Navy lost a fight to a German civilian ship. The nation has a high standard of batshit crazy stories, and once again, it fucking delivers. On the 3rd of May, Venezuelan officials foiled an attempted invasion just 32 kilometers from the capital of Caracas, which had the intention of arresting the long-running president, Uncle Roscoe. The unfortunate coup was foiled almost immediately, as it was suspected that Venezuelan intelligence knew about the plot and was able to stop the estimated 60 men before they were even able to land on the beach. The conflict between the Venezuelan military and the rebel force resulted in at least 8 dead and 2 arrested US mercenaries. This is where things get even more interesting. Although the United States has placed a $15 million bounty on the Venezuelan president for his suspected involvement in a long-running narcotics terrorism conspiracy, the US president has denied any connection to the event. The operation was revealed to be entirely organized by a Florida-based private security company, which was confirmed by the company's founder, an ex-Special Forces soldier by the name of Jordan Gaudreau. Mr. Gaudreau claims that the operation was commissioned by the exiled opposition leader to Uncle Roscoe, Juan Guaido, who is recognized as the legitimate leader of Venezuela by 60 nations around the globe. The private security company claims they were promised $213 million for the operation, citing both an alleged contract and a phone conversation with the opposition leader. However, neither source provides details of any military operation. What's certain is that no money was actually paid by Mr. Guaido, as the operation was remarkably crowdfunded, in large part from Venezuelan immigrants living in Colombia, working as Uber drivers. When asked why the company would send a small invasion force into the heavily fortified coastline, the private security founder said that the operation was inspired by Alexander the Great at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. The Swag News team probably doesn't have to mention that there were a few notable differences between this operation and the one orchestrated by one of the greatest military leaders of all time, but we'd be depriving viewers if we didn't do so. Not only were they outnumbered nearly 5,500 to 1, and not only was an airsoft gun reportedly found among the invasion equipment, but the fucking private security company who organized the operation announced the invasion on Twitter while also tagging the President of the United States for good measure. You can't make this shit up. There are a million ways to end this story, which has evolved to be one of the most interesting in recent months. But what better than an outro montage of all our favorite characters?
You know you make me wanna shout, put my hands jumping, put my heart stumping, throw your hair back, come on now, don't forget to say you will. Yeah, don't forget to shout, yeah, 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 say you will, throw your hair back, baby. Come on, say you will, throw your hair back, woo. Come on now, say that you love me, say that you need me, say that you want me, ain't gonna leave me. Come on now, come on now, come on now. I still meet me, you wanna love me so.
This has been the news for May 2020, but as always, here are some announcements. Those of you who have been supporting the channel on Patreon can finally feel validated, as a 5th exclusive video has now been uploaded, which is available to any tier of supporter. To view the video, simply go to my Discord server in the description, click on the list of Patreon exclusive text channels, and enjoy. The most recently uploaded is a video about how Pepsi came to own the 6th largest navy in the world. Those of you who aren't Patreon supporters don't need to worry, as the exclusive video will be uploaded for all viewers next month. The Swag News team would once again like to thank nearly 500,000 subscribers for making the series possible.